Hi, Creative Momentum friends. Welcome back to our creative process interview series where writers and healers discuss creative practice and share inspiration and flow. I'm Meg Hyertz. I'm the author of Tarot for Beginners and the founder of Creative Momentum, where we help writers free their voice, nourish their practice, and finish their project. I'm joined today by Doug Henderson. Doug is the author of the Cleveland Heights LGBTQ Sci-Fi and Fantasy Role-Playing Club and a winner of the Dau Short Story Prize for Emerging Writers. His work has appeared in the Iowa Review, Short Edition, Michigan Quarterly Review Mixtape, and Beyond Queer Words. Originally from Cleveland, he lives in San Francisco with his husband and two children. Welcome, Doug. I'm so happy to have
Hi.
you here.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's such a luxury and a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Would you start us off by reading a little bit from the novel, please?
Yeah, totally. Let me
Carol?
just grab it off the shelf back there. Okay, we're just gonna do a little bit from the very beginning, right?
Great.
This chapter is called The Summoning. Ben stood in the basement and called upstairs. Mom, have you seen my dice bag up there? What dice bag, sweetheart? His mother replied from the kitchen. My only dice bag. He'd been using that same dice bag since high school. It's made of purple velvet, ties with a string. Where'd you leave it last? I thought on my desk, but oh, well, that explains it. His mother stepped into the doorway. She wore her glasses around her neck on a silver chain. That place is such a mess down there. It's a wonder you can even find your desk. Mom, please, I'm in a hurry. Ben slid on his yellow windbreaker. Of course she would bring this up now as he was rushing to get out the door. Can you help me look? It's not up here, I can tell you that. Mom, please just look. As Ben turned to continue his search, his cat, Onigiri, slipped through his legs and ran ahead of him. Ben kicked past piles of dirty clothes, dirty dishes, and empty beer cans. He pushed aside stacks of books and comics on his desk. He dug past his pencil cup, crammed full, and moved around the dusty model of the Death Star he'd made in the seventh grade. But no dice bag. Last Thursday, after gaming, he'd come in through the front door, not the cellar door, because he was starving and he wanted something to eat. He'd slipped into the kitchen, warmed up some macaroni and cheese, and then crept downstairs without turning on a light. He dropped his backpack by the by the lazy boy, put his books on his desk, his wallet by the empty aquarium, and his dice bag. Ben closed his eyes. He felt through the air with his fingers and stretched out his mind, expanding it into every nook and corner of the basement, under the bed, behind the bookshelves, through the dark and musty shadows of the storage room. Lucky dice, where art thee? Manifest me on a count of three. One, two, three. Ben glanced at the floor between his feet. Nothing. He looked at his desk. Onigiri looked back, blinking, as dust settled upon the Death Star. God, he was an idiot. What was he thinking? Magic doesn't exist. Those dice were just dumb pieces of plastic. He knew that, and still he was such a weirdo all the time. No wonder he couldn't get a boyfriend. Ben collapsed onto the lazy boy. Above him, the basement door opened with a squeak. Ben, honey, are these them? From the top of the stairs came the sound of dice shaking in their bag. Yes. He dashed up the steps, and his mother dropped the velvet pouch into his hand. Thanks. Where were they? They were on the floor next to the couch. But I looked there. Sometimes, when you're in a rush, you don't see things that are right in front of your face. And sometimes, Ben said, objects of power don't reveal themselves to the mortal plane unless called forth with a summoning spell. His mother tisked. You've been playing too many of those games. But it worked, Ben said as he headed downstairs. His mother called after him. I only say that because I worry. You have to think about the real world too, you know. Think about your future. You're almost 30 after all. Mom, I'm 25. That's almost 30 in my book. Mom, stop. They had already talked a million times about his future. I'm going out the back. I'll be home later. With that, Ben climbed up the creaky ladder, through the cellar doors and set out. And that's the
Beautiful.
beginning.
Thanks for that summoning spell.
Right.
So this book is so fun to read.
Oh,
Um,
good.
I read a lot of sad girl novels where
Oh.
it's a really big deal if the protagonist even like leaves the house. So it was really fun for me to read such an action-packed novel. On every page there's a new development, a
Mm,
reversal, or a plot
mm.
twist, and the characters are fighting hell demons and organizing a kiss-in, and it's all very exciting. And I imagine you had a lot of fun writing it. Um, what have role-playing games taught you
Mm,
about writing action and plot?
mm. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm sure they've taught me more than I even realize. For me, in writing the novel and trying to express that experience, I think the challenges were that, role-playing games are very spontaneous. They're created right in front of you on the table. Um, and it's a lot of group storytelling and group problem solving. And so that for me was something I really wanted to translate to the page. So I wanted it to feel spontaneous. Even though, of course, I, as the writer, in theory, knew where everything was going. I always wanted it to feel like, oh, they're just figuring it out. They're just discovering where they're going to go or what's going to happen next. Um, Maybe that's why it always feels like there's a reversal, there's a twist, or everything is back and forth all the time. Um, so I wanted it to feel spontaneous. I wanted it to feel like group problem solving or group storytelling. So there's a lot of collaborative effort in what happens. There's some like revision sometimes and some correction. Um, and Ben, the protagonist, doesn't always have control of the direction the story is going, which is maybe a larger metaphor. Um, but yeah, those are the things that I really learned and tried to pay attention to in terms of role-playing games. I also think that they're episodic, and that was something else that sort of lended itself very easily, I think, to this book when we talk about like plot or plot structure. Um, it had a nice, easy, episodic rhythm to it from the beginning. Every night they meet every Thursday. Um, so it could be sort of like a sitcom in that way, I guess.
Yeah, gives you a frame to play in within which
Yeah, yeah. And then
improvise and
and then
collaborate.
break and then break at some point. I knew like it's going to be too much for Ben. It's going to break at some point, and then that's going to lead to all kinds of other stuff.
Yes. Um, This book is so funny
Mm,
from the chapter titles that frame everyday life in mythic terms, similar to kind of that summoning spell,
mm,
to the endearing, bumbling characters seeking love,
mm,
to fantasy sequences, like this one that I'm just gonna read a little
mm,
bit. The characters are trying to escape a tentacled creature. Um, it's almost upon us, Bjorndar said, and the creature cried again, ringing their ears. Why aren't you rowing faster? I didn't roll high enough, Gunther said. So it's such a funny blending
mm,
of those two worlds. Um, and I really enjoy how the book plays with epicness
mm,
as both exciting and silly. I think there's a
mm,
lot of profound statements about magic through the humor
mm,
of the book.
mm,
Um, because you play with the fact that we often don't know the reason things happen, or you
mm,
just mentioned we're really not in control.
mm,
Um, and it's kind of silly to attribute
mm.
magic to a 20-sided die. But also we don't understand fate, so why not? Um,
Right.
and in and around the humor in this book, I think there's really a longing in the characters for life to be more meaningful than it appears on the surface or more epic. I think we saw that in the section that you read. And just their willingness to devote themselves to fantasy and adventure makes this book really fun to read. At what point in the writing process does humor come in for you?
Mm.
And and then kind of part two of this question is when you're revising a funny scene or a bit of dialogue, are there any rules of thumb that you follow to kind of amp up the humor?
Yeah. Let me step back and talk a little bit about the mythicness or the the world that they're in. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to write into a world where sort of fate or coincidence, serendipity, chance, all of this stuff could feel like magic because I think to these characters, especially to Ben, I think from his point of view that that is a kind of magic in in everyday life.
Mhm.
And I myself am like, sure, there's magic. There's coincidence. There's all these things that happen to us without any explanation. So I think that's why that sort of element is in the book. Also manifesting. I'm a big like proponent of manifesting the things into the world that you want to exist. Um, yeah,
Can I jump in
yeah,
and ask you
yeah.
about what you've manifested?
Well, I manifested this book for one thing. I'm sure I've
That's
manifested
awesome.
love, romance, my entire family, all of these things that I wanted, so badly that they happened. I think I don't know how else. Maybe it was just a coincidence. I don't know. Um,
Desire is powerful.
yeah, I think so too. Or maybe that's all silly, and I don't know. It would have happened anyway. I don't know. Um, and then in terms of humor, I think humor is really tough. I sweat the humor a lot. I stay awake at nights debating the humor. Um, I think it's very hard to make the page seem light and to make things seem funny. It does take a lot of revision. Um, Jokes that don't work, or in the beginning, sometimes there are no jokes, and then I'm like, there's no jokes here. How am I going to find the jokes? And then somehow, through revising and rewriting, I don't know, you see in the layers like there's something, and that you just sort of pull it out. I don't even know. Other times, I do have a sense just from the character's point of view. Um, that I think this could be a funny bit. Um, I think my personal favorite character is Mooneyham. I think that torturing him is a lot of fun, and I think he's just naturally lends himself to I think funny moments. His entire arc with the kissing, all of that, his stubbornness and whatever, to me is the kind of person I want to poke and like make funny things happen to him. Um, I don't know, it's just answering your question. So yes, lots of revision, a lot of just very light pulling of strings, sort of dusting under the surface, finding where the jokes could be. And then you asked for like a tip or what, I can't remember what you had asked the
You
second
don't
part.
need to give it a tip.
But
I think,
but
go ahead.
but what I always tell myself is I always wonder if it's gone far enough. And I always
Mm,
push myself to to crank it to 11, to just go further.
mm.
Um, I think it, for an example, is the horny homunculus scene. The first time I wrote that, I knew that Ben and Albert were going to go to a concert together. These are my this is my couple. The love interest is Ben. I knew they were going to go to a concert. I knew Ben was going to be like a fish out of water. I didn't know he was going to get crowd surfed out onto the stage. I didn't know there was going to be like an inflatable penis of Satan there for him to interact with. But I just kept pushing it. And I was like, okay, he's going to get pressed into the front of the stage. And then what can happen? Oh, he's going to get crowd surfed onto the stage. Oh, and then what can happen? And I was literally on a walk and I was like, oh, he's going to have to dance and put on a costume. It's going to be like a whole thing. And I came back and typed it up. So yeah, I think you just got to keep pushing it, seeing if you can go further. It takes a lot of revision, and then cutting jokes when they get stale or when they're bad, looking for another angle. And I'm often inspired by, I don't know, there's directors from when I was a kid who did like the airplane movies and the Naked Gun and all of those movies where there's just 1,000 jokes. Every minute there's another joke, and they're coming from all different angles. Some are physical, some are visual, some are through dialogue. And so I try to keep that kind of technique in the book. Like sometimes the jokes are from dialogue, sometimes they're physical or they're in the environment, or I don't know what. Um, just to because not everyone has the same sense of humor, and to keep things unexpected or you don't know where it's going to come from. If that makes
Yeah, that
sense.
keeps
I
the
don't know.
element of surprise going.
Yeah.
That's such a great answer.
Mm.
Would you like me to pull a card for you?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. What's going on in your process, in your content that you're kind of trying to figure out?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm currently working. I finished draft 4 of the latest novel.
Congratulations.
Um, yeah. Thanks. I finished around Halloween. Halloween was my self-imposed deadline. And then I've gone back to it maybe two or three times. I mean, it's always in my mind. I'm always washing dishes and writing, the next novel. But I'm kind of the ending is all wrong. I'm kind of stuck at the ending, the final one-fourth of the book, maybe. Um, I just think it needs reorganized. I think it needs to go probably a different direction. Um, and yeah, that's the big struggle at the moment. I don't know if the tarot deck can help me with that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm choosing between whether um okay, I want to pull two cards, one for something that can kind of fade into the background, and then something else that can kind of come forward instead. If that's
Okay, very cool.
all right. Tell me when to stop shuffling.
Stop.
Oh, wow. Okay, I think you're closer than you think. Um,
Really? Okay.
yeah.
Mhm.
And it might just be a matter of taking the theme and embodying it more specifically.
Mhm.
Um, so the reason I think you're close is because I pulled two nines. So
Okay.
so both for what to take away and to add, they're both nine. So it might not be a huge reworking. Um, would it make sense to add more people to to whatever scene you're thinking about? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah. As soon as you said that, I thought of the people to add, which is kind of
Oh,
funny.
cool. Oh, wonderful. Okay, that was easy. Yeah, so do that. The thing that can kind of fade into the background is this hermit card,
Mhm.
um,
Oh.
which here I'm kind of reading as maybe there's not enough characters. And also this is kind of a big thematic card.
Mhm.
Um, Questions about what are the spiritual questions that drive the characters, that drive the book. Um, and then what to kind of add is the Nine of Cups, which is more embodied. So, and less kind of
Mhm.
big theme and just kind of how does that come through in the actual scene? And this is kind of a party. There's
Mhm.
the hermit character, if there's a hermit character, a loner character, or just someone who's focused on their personal spiritual pursuit. They might be the one to kind of host a party,
Mhm.
literally or figuratively. Um, and yeah, do they kind of come into the world in a way that they can take the big questions that they've been asking into more specifics with more specific people, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, Meg, this is making so much sense. It's wild.
Yay!
I
Oh,
can't
that's
believe
so
it. Yeah,
cool.
it's amazing. Yeah, very
Oh,
cool.
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yay. Well, have fun writing.
Yeah, thanks.
And would you please give us a prompt for writing a meet
Oh, yeah.
cute?
Yeah, so I love meet cutes. There's a meet cute in the book. I'm sort of fascinated by them. I enjoy reading them, even if perhaps they're corny. Yeah, so very simply, and this is sort of a generative prompt or meet cute prompt. But if you just think of your character, protagonist, main character, can you be yourself if you're just starting, someone you know? And just, I like to start with a list. And just start with a list and just think about their schedule. Where do they go every day, every week, whatever, every month? And just write a list. And then as you go through their list, think about those locations, where could they be? And then in another column, think about everything that could go wrong in that space. Like what's going to go wrong on a day that's unusual? What could go wrong in those spaces, right? Then if you already have a love interest, you may write their schedule and see where those schedules match up. And then very easily, you've got a location that matches up, you've got a day that went wrong that matches up, and these this is like ideal for a meet cute. If you don't already have a love interest, you could then just simply think about who are all the people that might also be there in those locations or their places, those places. Maybe it's a total stranger to start with. Um, I think that very easily, in my mind, could generate a meet cute.
That is so fun. I can't wait to do that.
Yeah, try it out. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, I was enjoying in the book when Ben is thrifting and Ben has kind of a philosophical take on thrifting for a minute. I was really getting into it. And then the love interest shows up. I
Of course.
was
I mean, how dreamy. I would love to run into my love interest while thrifting. He's
yeah.
looking at records. He's like such an idealized romantic foil, like, tight jeans, Converse, tattoos, looking at records,
So perfect.
dreamboat.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. Everyone, you can get Doug's book at through the University of Iowa Press. The link is below. Doug's website is doughendersonauthor.com. And he also co-hosts the podcast from the Writer's Grotto. So check that out as well.
Yeah, and our focus is generally on emerging writers, tips for new writers. So yeah, take a listen.
Oh, wonderful. Well, your tips today were so great. So that sounds like
Thanks.
a good resource. Well, thank you so much, Doug.
Yeah,
Happy
Meg, thank you.
writing
You too.
and happy creating, everyone.
Thanks so much. Catch y'all later.